I'm Bret Alexander, and I'm the sound of Humboldt.
I used to be an outcast till you brought me in. Used to be at odds with you, but now you call me friend, and I'm a man.
So we all know you, Mr. Alexander, as a super happy guy for those of us who are super close with you.
Who you've been talking to?
So where did it all begin? Like, where did you start your awesomeness?
Where did I start my awesomeness? About 5 minutes ago, as soon as I walked into this room. Probably, I'd say, let's see, I bought my first 8-track with my own money. Probably about 1980, 81. And I think it was all downhill from there.
That was before I was born.
Yeah, that was a while ago. I was probably, it may have been even in 78, 79. I was only 5 or 6 years old, and I really wanted a Beach Boys. And I think it was either Beach Boys, Santa Ana Winds, or Poco Legend. Great albums. But yeah, that was on 8-track.
And then how did that transition into you actually playing music?
I actually didn't start playing music until probably more like 86, 87. 8th grade year, I think, when I was making the transition. Well, I was skateboarding a lot, and me and one of my best friends, he was learning guitar at the same time I was learning guitar, and that's when we first started right about that. I don't even know what sparked it. I think my dad gave me an acoustic and said, "Do you want to learn guitar?" Taught me a little blues riff, and I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. What else can I do with this? And then we just started learning everything we could learn, me and my friend.
And did that, when did you start playing in church? When was that whole transition? Did you start out just playing blues and all that stuff? Or
no, my first influences were probably a lot more top 40 stuff, just because that's what my mom and my dad listened to. You know, Bob Seger, Willie Nelson, Motown stuff, Four Tops, Temptations, all that kind of stuff. But when me and my friend first started playing guitar, it was all Metallica and Anthrax, Poison, Motley Crue, anything we can get our hands on that we considered rock, and was really, now I guess you consider it classic rock because it's so long ago, but it was that kind of stuff. But then at the same time, we were kind of picking up licks from like Phil Collins songs, and I never really got into blues or anything like that until later. And then it was about 88, 89, I think, when we started a youth band at our church, and none of us really knew how to play our instruments, so we were all kind of learning together. And then we basically took over the main church worship team at the time when we all got good enough to play in front of the church, and we weren't ready to throw up while we were playing in front of everybody.
So did you get saved around the time when you were in the youth band or starting that whole thing? Or
Before. Right before. It was the summer between 88 and 89, I think. I've only been playing maybe a year and a half, and just really kind of noodling around, learning stuff, learning riffs. I don't think I knew one whole song ever. Mm-hmm. And then they needed guitars for the youth band, and I was getting really involved with the youth group at the time, and I started learning everything I could get my hands on.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And when you started playing for the youth band and church and stuff, when was your first encounter? Like, when did you actually like experience like the presence of God in your playing? Like, you know, those moments that you have where you're just like, wow, this is more than just playing guitar. This is like something much bigger. Like, when did you have one of those moments?
I think it was probably, it's kind of sad because I got to say that the whole time playing, there was probably moments where we touched on it, but I don't know if it was really a connection with me and God and the music. I think it was more of we were playing all the right stuff and maybe people were into it. But I never really felt like the emotional connection really, really strong until way later in life. It was more of I seem to be fairly good at this. I can pick up stuff. I can listen to a song and figure out all the different licks and keys in a song, and I was kind of like the go-to guy for the worship team. When they go, hey, we need to learn a new song, we'll give the CD to Bret, and then he'll figure out everything, and I'd write everything out for him and say, okay, this is how we do it. And that was kind of like the big thing for me, was I was just learning so much. It wasn't a connection, more of, I guess it was kind of a connection, but not the connection I guess I have now with it. It was more of a, wow, I seem to be good at this, better than anybody else in my peer circle. And so I was always kind of the one who knew the most at the time, and that was kind of a huge kind of positive peer pressure type of thing. But I can't really recall the one time through that 18 years that I was on that worship team where I ever really felt a huge emotional or spiritual connection. It's kind of sad, but that's what it was like. It was more of rocking with the youth band and just trying to create an atmosphere where people felt like they could worship and lead people to God. That was probably more of what it was. And I think that had a lot to do with just the people who were leading at the time. It was very kind of not a whole lot of freedom. Actually, I think the very first time I really connected with music on a spiritual level, I wasn't even playing. And we went to a worship conference in Modesto, and Lincoln Brewster was actually there, and that was the first time I met him.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, he was really, really cool. We got to have a one-on-one kind of conversation and a little guitar clinic for about an hour and a half, me and like 15 other guys. And it was one of those moments during worship where I remember seeing the guy playing keyboard and singing. His name was Jared something. I forget what it was. He was just on fire. He was so passionate about what he was playing and singing, and he was kicking up his feet, almost dancing. And I'm going, what the heck is this stuff? And I'm like, I've never experienced worship like this before. And I was just, the anointing was so strong that I just started just bawling. I was trying to film for the rest of whoever couldn't come. I was trying to film all the services for them. And I was crying so hard that I had to quit filming. And I'm just like, what is going on? This is crazy. There was so much freedom. And if you wanted to dance, you could dance. If you just wanted to lay down and soak, you could do that. If you just wanted to stand there and bawl like a baby. And that was the first time where I saw real freedom in a worship service. And that was probably, it must have been, I think I'd already been married at least a good year. So maybe 94, roughly. 94, 95, somewhere around there. I can't remember if it was right about there.
Interesting. And so being a Christian musician, some people have the issue of, okay, you play in church and then you also play in bars and stuff like that, and I've had that issue too. And how do you respond to something like that? Because I've definitely been asked that too, and because you play at blues jams and stuff like that with Jim Lawman, and how do you respond to stuff like that?
Well, I've never actually been approached in any kind of negative way about it, which was actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if I wanted to put any kind of spiritual backing to it, I mean, there should be no place that a Christian or a follower of Christ should be able to go. Jesus hung out with prostitutes and the nastiest people in his day. He didn't hang out with all the church leaders. And literally, if you really believe that you have something to share, then there should be no place that is off limits. I mean, even I have no idea what this is like, but even like a satanic church or a satanic gathering, if they invited you there, I don't know how I'd feel about that, but it should be a place where you'd be able to present the gospel at any given time. Now that's the spiritual right thing to say. For me, music is music. Whether it's being played in church, whether it's being played on the corner by a homeless person, whether you're in a blues jam, whether you're playing classical music at the college auditorium, music is music. To me, it's a universal language. I believe, this is my belief, is that God created music and music for everybody. I think some people try to kind of butcher that a little bit and make it for their own views, but there is no higher calling than making music for the love of worshiping the God that you serve. And to me, that could be playing a blues lick, singing a blues song at a bar with the blues jam, or a Sunday morning, Sunday night, a conference by myself with an acoustic in my front room. Music is music. Everybody has some kind of passion deep inside of them, and sometimes it takes their whole life to figure out what that passion's all about. For me, it's always been music. For other people, it could be art, dance, or work, the passion for work or anything like that. When you have that passion in there, you've got to express it. You've got to let it out. That's what you were made for. It's what you were born for. So there is no, for me, there is nothing ever to apologize for, no matter where I'm playing it at. But like I said, I've never really been approached with, wow, you're a Christian. Why do you play in that bar? You know, I have my convictions. I know what I believe. And actually, most of the people that I play with, they're like, hey, do you have any regular gigs? And I go, well, I play for a couple different churches with a couple different worship bands, and that's what I play 3 or 4 times a month. They're like, really? What's that like? And I go, it's great, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it kind of opens up a conversation, a vein to talk about their views on God or their views in life, things like that. So it's opened up definitely conversations.
Yeah, and which is awesome too, because you're not like putting it out there that you're a Christian, but you're being an example just by being you, because we all know that you're freaking awesome. So it's just like whenever people come around you can just tell that there's something different about you, and then it's cool because you're being that example, and then somebody's like, oh, hey, where else do you play? That's rad. And you mentioned playing for different churches and stuff, and do you ever get burnt out playing for different things, like different churches and all that?
There's always a point where you're at a burnt out point. For the first 18 years of, I guess you could say, my Christian life, after I pretty much gave my heart to God, I played for one church and one church only. I think I did a couple things with some friends who had other bands every now and then, but it was pretty much that, and that was kind of almost like there wasn't a whole lot of freedom there, in my opinion. Maybe other people felt differently. I loved everybody I played with. I loved my church at the time, but I always knew there was something more to that. There had to be some kind of freedom to that. Now, during that time, I got burnt out many a times, and I had to find some way to break that. So I was always trying to find new ways to go. But at the time, too, the church kind of looked down on secular music or anything outside of Christian top 40 pop or whatever it was. So I kind of had to almost do it in secret in a way, and it almost made you feel like you were guilty. But nowadays, I think there's a lot more openness to different styles, and so yes, you can get burnt out playing the same riffs over and over again. And so a lot of times I'll try to mix it up, maybe put a little bit of a spin on it, or if this is a little single-eyed lead intro thing, kind of throw out there, well, let me try a slide on it instead, just to make it sound a little bit different. Yeah. Or what if instead of doing this, what if I do an octave run into that? Or how about I use a wah to start this out, just to try to break things up a little bit. There's always going to be leaders that are leading the music that want things a certain way, and if you want to be a part of what's going on, a lot of times you'll have to fall under their leadership, and you fake it till you make it, because you're above and beyond. You are a servant. You're a part of God's body, and if that is what you've chosen to help be a part of the ministry, then you need to recognize that. But there's definitely been times where I get burnt out and stuck, and I'll go home and go, man, what was that cool metal song I heard? I think I'm going to try to learn that lick. And it'd be way beyond what I know, but I'm like really pushing, trying to learn a part of it. Or, what's that really simple blues song? I don't know what the lyrics are. Maybe I should learn the lyrics. So a lot of times that'll break me out of the monotony, or sometimes I just need a break from music all by itself. And having a family, that's pretty easy to do because you can't always just sit down and plug everything in and blare at the, turn everything to 11 and go, because, you're like, okay, we got homework, we got this, we got laundry, we got blah, blah, blah. So there's never really a break with that. That's called life. Yeah. So sometimes life can break up the burnt outness and monotony of if you get stuck somewhere with music.
Mm-hmm. And how do you recharge yourself? Like after you get in that place where you just kind of feel stuck, like do you just learn new songs? Is that how you recharge yourself? But not just musically, but spiritually too. Like when you're just stuck in a rut, you're just like, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do you recharge yourself?
That's a good question.
Oh yeah.
I'd say, well, sometimes it's just breaking down and going to the source and go, I have no idea what's going on, God. I mean, just having a conversation with him, whether you feel he's responding in some way, sometimes isn't even the point, because he's listening. And if you believe he's there, it's like just having a conversation like you and I are now. So it's like, I don't know what's going on, God. This is really frustrating. I'm burnt out, or I'm stuck here. Is there something else I can do? Is there something else I can say? Should I be jumping up and down? Should I not be doing anything? Should I be quiet? Should I be yelling? Should I just put all this stuff down for a while? Should I pick it up and just... sometimes it's a different answer each time. It could be that it was, for example, I kind of felt like I was just stuck somewhere. Nothing was happening. And I just took, I forget which song it was. I just started playing it and singing it. And I didn't know the song very well. And it was a very simple melody and chord structure. And I just had this crazy moment where I just played for 5 or 10 minutes, and I just felt just God come all over me, and it broke whatever it was. And it wasn't anything new I was really learning. It was stuff I'd heard before. Other times I've just heard a song, and I was, feeling down, and I heard this song, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I never really liked this song before, but it just broke something in my spirit, and I was fine after that. So for me, the spiritual element is very strong in that. I think as humans, we try to do everything ourselves. We try to get out of that rut. We try to break out of the being burnt out feeling by ourselves. And there are elements where I think you can do that, but in the long run, God is definitely the in-between. You can do all that you can do, but you can never take the next step unless he's the in-between.